Good morning, committee members and other parties of interest. Please turn the light on. Start that over. Good morning, committee members and other parties of interest. This is the evaluation committee meeting for RFP 26-00069, Lower Green Swamp Cattle Grazing Lease. My name is Tisha Zhang, and I'm the senior buyer assigned to this project. This meeting is being held in part by means of communication media technology and has been publicly noticed. Active participation will be for committee members only. Provisions have been made for any member of the public desiring to have access to view the meeting. The recording will also be available after the meeting has ended. If you're watching online, please ensure you keep your camera off and microphone muted throughout the duration of the meeting. Please also be advised that the cone of silence is still in effect. All meetings and correspondence must include me. Again, for the record, this meeting is being recorded and has been publicly noticed. At this time, I will ask each committee member to introduce themselves for the record, beginning with the committee chairperson.
Good afternoon. My name is Forrest Turbeville. I'm Director, Conservation Environmental Lands Management Department and Chair of the Evaluation Committee today.
I'm Allie Williams. I'm the Small Farms Extension Agent with the UFI Fish Extension Service in Hillsborough.
Ken Bradshaw, Ecological Restoration Manager at Conservation and Environmental Lands Management.
Ross Dickerson, Division Manager, Environmental Lands Management.
Steve Raymond, Regional Land Management Coordinator, Lower Green Swamp Preserve.
And I have another member of procurement here with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself now.
My name is James Richardson. I'm a new hire with Procurement Services, your senior buyer. So thanks for letting me join you guys today.
You're welcome.
On January 9th, 2026, we received a total of 2 proposals in response to RFP 26-0069. 00069. I'll say that RFP again. It's RFP 26-00069. The evaluation committee will evaluate, discuss, and score by consensus the proposals in alphabetical order. Each proposal is to be evaluated based on the information provided in the proposal as it correlates to the requirements and evaluation criteria set forth in the solicitation. The evaluation committee chair, Forrest Turbeville, will lead the discussion for the scoring. After each criteria is discussed, please state the final consensus scoring agreed upon by each committee member so that I may record it in the scoring spreadsheet. After the conclusion of the scoring, I will verify the scores with the committee, announce the net proposal price, and provide the ranking. Forrest, I'll turn it over to you to begin discussing the first one.
Well, as Tisha, as Tisha mentioned, this will be consensus scoring. So we'll go by respondent as opposed to individual tabs, right? So we'll start with Audubon Ranch because we'll use alphabetical order, and A is the first letter in the alphabet. So I'll start off by saying that for Audubon Ranch, the proposer's response format followed the instructions that were outlined in sections 1.6.1, 1.6.2, 1.6.3, and 2.1.2. That's not scored. Just wanted to state that for the record. Moving on to tab A, qualifications. Allie, what were your thoughts on this?
I reviewed them and I find that Audubon Ranch is qualified for this based off of their previous experience managing similar projects like this. And all of the criteria within the responses gave detailed information that I didn't find any issues with. So I think in general, I would say that qualification wise, I would think that they are qualified for this.
Okay. Did you have a particular score for that?
I did. I scored them a I had them as a 19 on this one.
19.
Yes.
And if there's a moment of silence, just realize I'm writing this down. Already. Ken, what you got?
Okay, so overall, I found that the proposer was or is well qualified to perform under this. I noted particularly detail in there, and that all of the requested points and areas of qualification were answered, and again, with some important detail, including how and what, things like that were answered in their response. Appropriate affiliations, and again, just an extensive experience. And so my score was 19.
Okay, Ross.
Sure. So I agree. I think they are highly qualified, and I think they answered all the questions well. All the information that we asked for, they were looking for. And I liked how they reflect a strong ability to manage grazing as a land management tool that protects habitat, soil, hydrology, and wildlife resources. And their operation scale is clearly quantified and directly applicable to managing a 7,905 acre ranch and conservation land. So I gave them a 20.
Steve.
I also gave them a 20. I had noted that 52 years in the cattle industry since 1974 is what was reported. 32 years at Lower Green Swamp. To my knowledge, we had not had a problem with them. The 6 different counties and over 36,000 acres managed. I found it interesting that they discuss cattle futures in their marketing. That they have a lot of experience in treating invasives. The affiliations, the CARES program, I found that interesting in there. And all those added to why I gave them a 20.
And felt like their strengths were 50 years of cattle operations experience, good understanding of fertilization rates, proven track record and financial commitment to invasive plant spraying at Lower Green Swamp Reserve. That was the example that they provided. Several active professional affiliations, ability, capacity to perform grazing operations, as demonstrated by their ongoing grazing over 45,000 acres of owned or leased land in Central Florida. Just a couple of minor weaknesses. I felt like some of the elements could have been described in more detail and included examples of direct experience for each element. And the number of years of experience associated with each element were not consistently provided. And then finally, and this is just a potential weakness, and it could actually be a strength in some cases. Herbicide, pesticide, and fertilizer applications are subcontracted to another company. Yeah, I just put potential weakness on that one. Nothing really critical. I gave a score of 18. So we have 118, 2 19s, and 2 20s. Any thoughts?
Does that make 19 make sense?
It does to me.
I think so.
I think 19 is, yeah, I mean,
That's,
Yeah, if you all are comfortable with changing your scores.
yeah. Okay, Kathy. Experience? Alex, what you got?
I thought that they have a pretty strong experience section. Clearly, they've got quite a few years in the industry managing cattle and a lot of similar large scale operations. So one of them was 11,700 that they mentioned. And I think that that's adequate, especially being able to manage multiple large scale ranches. I think that that speaks highly of them. I had just some things mentioned. Ongoing relationships seem to be a common theme with them in some of these examples. And so the fact that they're renewing leases is giving a good idea as to they seem to be wanted tenants. And then just some of the examples, reforesting some of their properties after hurricane damage, tourist relocation, water restoration project that speaks to the conservation as to, you know, that's what the county's looking for. So I think that those are good examples. And they gave some really great examples of some of these answers, right? Services provided, specific examples of amount of fencing and that sort of thing. So I found this section to be very well. The one thing that I saw that kind of could have been explained a little more, they gave examples for the scope of services provided instead of listing all the things that they could potentially do. And that's just one thing that I had noticed on that. So I gave them an 18 on this.
Ken?
So, experience, so noting that their experience is very applicable to current lease and that in both scope, size and scope, 9,200 acres at Lower Green, but then ongoing on 23 separate properties, over 36,000 acres, 6 counties in Central Florida. So directly related experience, active and different awards and things have been recognized for their stewardship. And then also just looking at the projects of similar size and scope. They are all in the over 1,000 acre range. And again, long-term. So obviously, like Ali said, desirable as a tenant. I didn't see any issues, so I gave them a 20.
Ross?
I also gave them a 20, based mostly on what Ken already said. But just the fact that they're currently managing the preserve, which is over 9,000 acres. At one time, they had 12,000 acres out there. They have the Stolen Saddle Ranch, which is almost 12,000 acres. They have 5,200 acres at Mosaic. So 3 very comparable sized projects. And I talked about their long-term lease continuity, habitat restoration efforts, and sustained stewardship investments. So I gave them a 20.
Steve?
So the things that stuck out to me, I believe that they do have the experience required for this lease. The current lease/owned properties to be 23 separate properties over 36,000 acres. In their proposal, it looks like they have a lot of leases, but I didn't notice the stocking rates listed on the actual leases to know how many cattle they're managing on that acreage. Did notice that, most of these have been on for multi-years and they were renewed since the 80s. So that's pretty impressive. Also didn't provide the reasons for success, just I came to the assumption that they were successful and that's why they listed them because they were renewed. So I did deduct 1 point for that, so I gave them a 19. Because I felt like success was implied, not really defined. But I would assume that a renewed lease, you wouldn't renew with somebody that's not doing well. I believe that success was implied, but not necessarily detailed.
All right, so, for me, the strengths are that, they conduct cattle grazing on owned or leased lands covering 45,000 plus acres throughout Central Florida. And this includes the County Florida Green Swamp Reserve, which they mentioned, and at least since 1993 from Hillsborough County. They also perform cattle operations on both self-owned and leased lands. Cattle leases range from 5 to an impressive 45 years. All are larger scale acreage tracts. Some weaknesses, and again, this may be getting into the weeds a bit, but I tried to follow the criteria as specifically as possible. I thought that more specificity and detail could have been provided in the narrative under section 126.4.21. Scope of services not provided for all of the listed projects under section 2.2. Additionally, the scopes of service that are provided are somewhat incomplete. Example, they only mention one particular element. The narrative that discusses successful cattle operations does not include information for each project that demonstrates that the proposer has the necessary experience qualifications to perform grazing operations at Lower Green Swamp. Again, simply going by the answer that was provided, not by anything that's, known by individuals. Under pasture site prep, seeding, invasive plant control, narrative should have provided information for all listed projects and included more detail for those that were listed. So I gave a score of 15. I was on the fence between 15 and 16, but I scored it as a 15. So with that, we have 19. I'm sorry, Ally, you had 18, correct? 18, 20, 20, 19, and 15.
Oh, one thing that stuck out to me that maybe I could look at closer was how describing how the project was a success. Like you said, in some cases it wasn't applied, so I did miss that. So I would be willing to come down a point. Like Steve did for that one, I did miss that.
So down to 18.
I was 20, so I would come down to that, something that
So Ken, you're good with 19?
yeah, I would go to a 19.
Okay. Ally, you gonna stick with 18? Okay. Ross, you gonna stick with 20?
I guess I missed that they didn't supply detail. I didn't have that in my records at least. But I'm willing to come down to 19, 18.
Okay, Steve, you're 19?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
to be a part of the group, if 18 is the right one, then I feel justified in that as well.
18 or 19?
I would be willing to come, I'm at 19, but I would agree to 18 if that was
Okay,
the group.
and like I said, I was on the fence between 15 and 16. But given what I've heard here, I'd certainly be willing to come up to 18 for me. All right, so we have 18, 19, 19, 18, and 18. 3 18s and 2 19s. Anybody have any strong opinions on that?
think
not
18 is fair.
particularly strong. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still comfortable with 18. You brought up some good points as well.
I'm okay with 18.
Okay.
I think that's fair. Okay, let's go with 18. Okay, and finally, we have tab C, technical approach. Ally, what are your thoughts?
So I thought that their, technical approach category was pretty detailed. They gave really good examples on the coving grass, PSA and smut grass, so I thought that was adequately answered. And just seeing their investment and dollar amount in what they, put into invasive management, I think is a very, important detail to keep in mind. Obviously, they've been doing some good nuisance animal control, and it's proven by the numbers that they're sharing with us. Infrastructure management, so one thing that I noticed a lot of, that they've mentioned is their employees are trained. So they have 4 employees and they're trained in these specific areas, that's listed all throughout the technical approach. And so that's something big to keep in mind, because they're gonna be a lot of the ones that are making this stuff happen. They've got a lot of experience in all these different categories. They've got the equipment and all of that for managing the roads and the culverts, and they said, they can replace things if needed. And so that's a big thing. Prescribed burning, I do like that they use grazing as a management tool. So in between burns, I think that's a good thing. Grazing pressure, that's one that I kind of noted, that it's good that they look at their stocking rate and then kind of manage from there based off of feed access, and then alleviating that based with the feed or rotating them. So in general, I thought that this was a really good section, and I gave them a 10.
Ken, what you got?
Yeah, I thought it was a strong technical approach. Good detail was provided. Some things that really stand out to me is the specifics on invasive control, and really the emphasis on invasive control, including the dollar amounts that have been allocated toward that. So they're obviously serious about controlling invasives, and that's something that's very important to us as well. Of almost paramount importance, along with range management. But nuisance animal control was adequate. They have multiple control methods. Sometimes one control method just kind of lets you down, but if you have 3. Infrastructure maintenance, like Ali said, or I think she said anyway, that staff members are well trained. That's appeared a few times every year, and I think that's really important, is the boots on the ground are trained and know what to do and how to handle situations. So that's something that stood out to me. Maintaining roads, that's obviously paramount importance to us as well. Prescribed burning, something that, even though I think burning is very important for most of what we do, and it can be a range management tool. I actually like that their management approach minimizes the need for prescribed burning. Great if you need to use it, but if you don't have to rely on it, then that's great too. Because that just adds an element of risk. So cattle range management, the escapes, that was I found that to be adequate. The approach to managing grazing pressure was good, again, starting with the stocking rate, working from there. Equipment appears to be adequate. So I gave it 10.
Okay.
So not to repeat everything, but I did like how they went very detailed into the invasive control, all the way down to keeping lines around the hay fields so that none of that hay, the Hermophria hay can get out into the pastures or into our natural areas. I like how they even talk about using drones these days to treat invasive plants, which is very important to make sure that you're hitting everything out there. I do wish that they actually would do more prescribed fire on the property to use a more natural way to get fertilizer into the ground rather than having to fertilize pastures all the time. But I do like how they do rotational prescribed fire. They're grading, erosion management, culvert replacement, so the maintenance is fantastic. And keeping up fencing around all of their leases, hundreds of miles of fencing is really good. So I gave them a 9. I deducted 1 point because one thing I noticed reading through it is I didn't see any changes to practices at the preserve, which after 30-something years, there's better things, there's better ways to do things. Including prescribed fire, doing more prescribed fire in there, even in the natural areas. So I give them a 9.
Okay, Steve.
I felt that they had an adequate description and approach to invasive treatments. They have a subcontractor that they use to treat large areas. I thought that was all good. They even got down to the herbicide cocktails and a discussion of appropriate timing of those applications. So I thought that was all really good. The feral hog control with 5 active traps. I thought that's, that's good. Fencing is very important. They talked about that. The repair of the 72-inch culvert that got breached during Milton, that was,
Yeah.
The RX manager being on site and burn if needed, but better to forage. Have that as a positive, a plus sign too. The discussion of the escapes, the one through Medard Reserve or the reservoir is the one that stuck out to me with the 2.5-hour retrieval. That was pretty during a hurricane or again, just after a hurricane. That's pretty good. Can't really speak, I don't know if I should speak about the current lease as they are the current leasee, but I haven't had any issues with any of those metrics. But based out of what they wrote here, I gave them a 10.
Okay. Okay, and I thought that this section was probably certainly their strongest, I felt, because it provided the most detail. Strengths provided detailed information regarding specific herbicides, spray rates, and timing for eradication of TSA, cotton grass, and smut grass, which were, requested in the RFP. This included a demonstrated financial commitment for exotic plant control at Lower Green Swamp Preserve over the past 5 years. And again, that was the example that they provided in the response. Provided effective hog removal methods and demonstrated success at the preserve over the past 12 months. Detail in there for that. Understands how to manage grazing pressure. Has an extensive list of company-owned equipment. Didn't realize that a company could have that much equipment, but that's certainly a good thing. Has a good understanding of infrastructure maintenance, includes fencing and great culvert repairs. Steve, as you mentioned, they provided that example. Major culvert replacement, a couple of weaknesses, very minor, I'd say in general. Would have liked to have seen more details provided for each response, in particular the use of examples from other properties just beyond Lower Green Swamp Preserve that they own or manage. 1 or 2 examples from Central Florida, I think would have been good. And Ross, to your point, while the proposer is not opposed to prescribed burning, it does not appear that this technique will be utilized heavily unless deemed necessary. That was just what I gathered from the proposal itself. But I thought in general, this was their strongest section. And I gave them a 9 out of 10. So we've got. We've got 3 10s and 2 9s.
It does now that you guys have pointed out, does stick out to me that they did say that about the prescribed fire, but I seem to remember it also said in there that they would take any. Direction from us, so I would think that. They would potentially adjust that if we said that we would like to see that, you know, 'cause
Yes.
they said that in there.
They did. They did.
And to Steve's point too, I forgot to mention that, but they do have a certified burn manager on staff, a dozer, a plow. So they do have everything to conduct burns on the property.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I felt like it was certainly their strongest section and I'm willing to go up to a 10.
I am as well.
Okay, let's go with 10. Okay. Okay, Roll Hard Cattle LLC. Again, I'll just start with a statement that the proposer's response format followed the instructions that were outlined in sections 1.6.1, 1.6.2, 1.6.3, and 2.1.2. So tab A, qualifications. Ally, what are your thoughts?
So reviewing this one, I did see, you know, they've got 30 years of experience and they manage over, 20,000 acres total. I thought that was, a good thing to note. I was reading through the different factors, of qualification and they list some, good practices that should be used. A lot of it though lacks detail of application of it. And I would have liked to see a native range stopping rate in here, since this is conservation land. They've mentioned one animal unit per 5 acres, and that it is site-based, stalking adjusted, but nothing specific to native range. I thought it was, you know, obviously a good thing that they own the fence company, easy access to those materials and abilities to manage that. And they do have the feral swine permits. One thing that I did know, I was looking at, and I'm not sure if this is a pesticide application or license in this section, because it does mention pesticide applications, but they did have to show the pesticide license, and I'm not sure if that ornamental herb is the correct one for pastures. I did want to check on that. I'm not sure if that's in this section. But overall with this one, I think they could be capable, but it's not communicated in detail, as much in this top section here. So, the practices themselves, I do think are good, but I wish it had a little bit more detail. And so I gave them a 16.
Okay, Ken.
Okay, so good qualifications, 30 years. 20,000 acres. Seem to have checked all of the, spoke to everything that we were asking for. And overall, though, would like to have seen a little bit more detail on how, on some of these. So yeah, maybe a little bit more detail on that would have been helpful in really getting deeper into the qualifications. Affiliations look good and were appropriate. But yeah, a little bit more detail on the how would have been helpful. So I gave a 16.
So I agree with everything that was said so far. They have 30 years of experience. They seem to know how to run a ranch. And they mention a lot of things in here that they do, but they don't go into detail about how they follow guidelines, how they rotate cattle. Like Ali said, they just pretty much said it was 1 to 5 across the board. With all of their sites, they remove invasive species to less than 2% invasive coverage, or as the lease requires, but they don't say how they're gonna get down to that. So it really was lacking detail. But I gave them an 18 out of 20.
Steve.
So I have that they reported 30 years of continuous ranching and cattle management, grazing on more than 20,000 acres, both private and public. Roll hard, an enterprise for fencing, and then reliable spreaders for the herbicide. I wasn't really 100% certain on the swine dealer certification that they were talking about in there. That in my head, that made me think, like, are they going to try to sell the pigs that they're catching off the property? And if that's the case, and what does that mean for the county? And just, I wasn't really sure how that translated into what we're trying to do here. I did have a question about what active affiliation means, maybe a little bit more detail in there of like board member or active member or something like that. Like, what does that mean instead of just listing off a name? So yeah, those were the big points that stuck out to me. I think that they would be qualified. It's just maybe I was a little concerned about, like what everybody else said, maybe not providing the details. It kind of felt like in those narratives, they were kind of just repeating what was in the lease or, the proposal that we put out instead of really saying, like, putting their tone on it. I didn't really catch that or feel that. So I gave them a score of 18.
Of their strengths were 30+ years of cattle operations experience, infrastructure maintenance, specifically fencing, pasture preparation, rotation. They do have several active professional affiliations. But Steve, as you mentioned, they were somewhat generic in nature. Operational capacity appears more than adequate. One weakness, and again, put potential weakness on this, is that the herbicide, pesticide, fertilizer applications are subcontracted to another company. Again, I'll put in quotes potential weakness, but I did dock them a little for that. I gave them a 19, scored 19. So we have scores of 16, 16, 18, 18, and 19. 18. 17.
Maybe 17.
Yeah, I would come up one partly just on, consensus but, I do think the herbicide or the invasive, having the capacity to respond quickly to invasives, perhaps, contracting out is, it's not like they grow overnight, but still just having that capacity in-house and right there and ready to go. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I
Didn't catch that.
I think that's a big issue because
Herbicide license.
turf and ornamental doesn't really transfer to natural areas.
That should be, I think, fields, golf courses, things like that. So they would need to have a private applicator's license, or I think the row crop could be potentially okay. I'd have to double check. But I don't think that the license that they provided was an ornamental and turf. And I don't believe that is adequate for pastures.
Did we, I can't remember, did we specify what,
Pulling that up now.
I know it's,
I think
they have
we
to
did
have.
specify.
We normally do.
Yeah, specified.
There's pastures, it should be licensed for pastures
Right. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it,
and
They're
native
not
in natural areas.
natural areas, so they should have core in natural areas, right? Or.
I'm not the pesticide,
I'm just saying, we have to have core, that's what
Right.
it is.
I did try to ask my coworker, but he wasn't in the office, so,
Yeah,
but I can follow up with y'all on that. But the private applicators is farms, but that would be on your own place, I believe.
Owned, like
Yeah.
your neighborhood property. It's really whatever we require. I mean, it's of course by law, but it's also what we would require.
that's right. Yeah, I can't remember if we specified natural areas in the bid itself.
We typically do, so.
But I do think that it says a lot. It says they can do a lot, but it just did not go into the detail of how that would happen.
Yeah,
Nice.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what they're saying is good. It's, ideal practices, but it's not backed up by the detail. But I would come up or we
Yeah.
You guys can move on while I to the next A2. You want?
Okay.
Cool.
We don't need to, you mean, and come back to it with the school.
Yeah.
Have the experience. Alan, what you got?
So they did mention managing, both improved pasture and native range, so I think that's good, because they are definitely managed differently. In their, similar project section, they did have some long-standing leases, 21 years, 19. And 2 of those are state leases, so I thought that was, a good example. So that section, I think, was well, they, with the scope of services, they were listed, but didn't give much detail again. And so I would have liked to see more detail in what they were, providing in scope of services for those similar leases. And then the narrative about why the lease lanes was a success, they did answer that. Their main criteria was cap crop percentage, which cattle management wise, I do think that that's an important factor. But I would have liked to see some land management success in there as well, since this is a conservation land lease. They did mention that they renewed a lease for 5 years. So that's obviously a good sign. But they did not answer the second part of that question. So how this project demonstrates that they are possess the necessary qualifications for this specific project. So they didn't explain why this makes them qualified for this project. The last section here, pasture site preparation, I did not see that answered on their proposal. So because of the incompleteness in some of these, I did score them at a 10.
What I would have asked. Okay, Ken, what you got?
Okay, so I also did note the improved pasture and native range management, so I thought that was a good thing to point out. That they pointed out, experience with both. And as well, all of the, or I thought all the boxes were checked. I missed that one that Ali mentioned there. But they did provide the 5 reference projects. Several were in the thousands of acres, a couple of them were not. So for me, that does bring it down a little bit, just for size, since we're dealing in the thousands of acres. So obviously they do have experience managing larger properties. But a few on here, or at least a couple on here, were certainly on the smaller side compared to the park property. Scope of services, they do list a lot of, the operations that go along and services that do go along with cattle ranching. So obviously they do have experience doing those. But my overall score on this one was 17.
Okay, Ross.
I agree with everything that was said so far. I think that their experience demonstrates their capability to perform the required services, but several of their projects are smaller in scale or shorter in duration. Or short in duration. And the success narratives emphasize production outcomes more than long-term habitat conditions on the properties. So I deducted points mainly for that, and they had fewer projects demonstrating sustained stewardship at or above 7,900 acres. I gave them a 7.
Okay, Steve.
When I read through this, it seemed to me that they jumped from 20,000 acres in the first section to talking about them managing 15,000 acres in the second section. So I could have read that wrong, but that's what stood out to me. And then it seemed like that they said they had 1,500 animal units over the 15,000 acres. So by my math, I could be wrong. Math doesn't always work, but that'd be 1 animal unit per 10 acres, which is not what we're doing here. We're doing 1 per 5. So each description outlines what was done on the property. Thought that was pretty good. Says they said the operation was successful, but not how or why it was successful. Putting the percentages of the calf cow. That was a little confusing to me. I didn't know if that was like how many calves survived or how many made it to market or what those percentages were. The way I read it, all 5 projects that were listed were on leased land, none were on owned land. That's again, just the way I read it. They seem to have experience with lower stocking rates. Like I said, the lease is for 7,905 acres. We're doing 1 animal unit per 5 acres, so that's 1,581, and that's in the proposal. So to me, their stocking rates were lower than what we're looking for, less cows to manage. Like I said, all experiences seem to be on leased lands. I noted the percent of successful crop, not necessarily the condition of the environments that they were working in or the stewardship or anything like that. So I gave them a 17.
Okay. Okay, I have strengths. Provided extensive and varied scope of services provided across medium to large scale acreage tracts. Current cattle leases range from 6 to 21 years. At least one of those leases was recently renewed. That was the Florida Forest Service Arcadia in 2024. I think that was the Peace River State Forest. And checking the reference. Listed projects resulted in successful cap crop operations ranging from 75 to 95%. The range of services provided in the project descriptions match those being requested in the county's RFP. Weaknesses, as Ally mentioned, could have provided more site-specific detail regarding pasture site prep, seeding, and invasive plant control. And Steve, as you mentioned, there were no listing of cattle operations on self-owned lands. So I gave I docked them 2 points on that, so I gave them an 18. So it looks like our scores here are 10, 17, 17, 17, and 18.
Mine's low because I thought that the pasture site prep was separate, but are you saying that you read it like within the scope of services and that's where you got that?
So that you're talking about the last bullet point?
Yeah.
Right, so
Like when.
that falls under the 5 projects, right? So I looked at that as like one of the criteria for,
So they
because
did
you go
mention-
1,
They
2, 3.
mentioned invasive control, maybe spraying, that they did that.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, that was under scope of services, but then it says, provide a narrative of their experience in pasture preparation, seeding, and invasive plant control. So is that different than listing their services? Or did you just count it as part of it?
I just didn't see the direct experience. I didn't see the narrative for the direct experience. So the way I looked at this particular section is you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Basically, you have 8 criteria underneath there. Let's see how I did this.
So I would go up in my score. I scored low just because there was a lot of unanswered questions. Skipping the second half of the success question and then not directly answering this last one. But if y'all are accepting it being within the lease descriptions, then I could go up on my score.
Yeah, I mean, just for my scoring purposes, I had that as like between 1 and 2 points, that particular answer. Or, I'm sorry, that particular criteria.
Yeah, it's kind of that question of how, you know, how will you do this really
Yeah,
to some degree? Or how did you do that, I guess?
I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's one of those, I mean, historically, I don't like to dock somebody like for each project. You
Right.
see what I'm saying? If they missed it, okay, they missed it, but let's don't dock them, 5 points for missing it for 5 points. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just me.
Well, then if y'all are okay with it being within the rest of it and not that, then I would, I could go up to 15 or whatever. I mean, just for my score, and then we
Okay.
can figure out the overall.
All right, well, if you're comfortable for 15. and If you're comfortable, are you good with that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I had it, the way I scored it, they were separately counted, so.
Okay. What do y'all think of that?
I think everybody else scored higher.
Yeah, I mean, this thing would, they'd be more consistent with the rest of the scoring.
We were at 17, right?
Yeah.
So if you went 18, 15 to 16 makes sense. That's somewhere.
Yeah.
I know we're not adding them all together and doing an average. I'm just saying if
Yeah, we've got 115 and 118.
Yeah.
3 17s.
did that make sense in the score.
So, yeah.
16.
16? Yeah. Okay. Okay. And going back to,
I got 16.
we still have C. I'm sorry, Tisha, can we go back to tab A?
Yep, so I got 16 for A2. For A1, you asked about the pesticide license. What's written in the solicitation is that the proposer shall possess a Florida pesticides applicators license, FPAL. The FPAL shall be active at the time of the proposal submission and shall be maintained.
So guys, help me out here. Did they provide that or did they not provide that?
They did, but it was terminal ornamental
Right?
and through that third party reliable spreaders, right?
Right.
It does say the proposer can utilize a subcontractor for this element, and that the proposer shall provide a copy of the subcontractor's FPAL license, along with the proposer business arrangement among the parties for FPAL.
Specify. But ornamental and turf, according to FDAX, is not the appropriate license to spray in pasture. You need to have an ag category, and that is not an ag category. So it has to be April or natural areas or something like that.
Okay. And so, in some of your scoring, did you look at that and take that into consideration?
I didn't notice the category, so that was a really good catch. What I took into consideration was, while it is acceptable to have a subcontractor, it's preferable to have the in-house capacity.
That's what I
For at least
looked at.
some of it.
Yeah.
Now, again, going back to the license, again, it's acceptable according to, being able to submit a proposal to have just a straight up FX, any of the categories of license, but from a preference standpoint, and perhaps even from a
We would not allow them to spray on the
Right.
property.
Yes,
If we were hiring a contractor, that would never pass county risk requirements to spray on our properties.
Right.
So they do meet the requirements of the bid at this time because they provided a commercial license, but that commercial license would not be acceptable for spraying on our property.
Okay. So the scores, the way we had it, were 16, 16, 18, 18, and 19 for tab A. 17 would be an average. Then 16, 16, 18, 18, and 19.
Acceptable.
Yeah, that works.
So it work? 17.
So for A1 qualification 17.
Correct. Tab C, technical approach. Ellie, what you got?
I thought they had a pretty strong section for a technical approach. They did mention, invasive management, and when they would manage the weeds and things like that. They did not mention specifics on how they would manage each, cutting grass, tropical soda, apple, and smut grass. But they did mention time of year and things like that, so I did dock a point for that. The nuisance animal control, I found adequate. They do have, access to traps and, different removal methods, so I thought that that was good. Fencing, obviously, they have a whole company for that, so I think that that's a good thing to have. Maintaining roads and things like that, they mentioned in, inspecting them and, repairing as needed, erosion control, all good things. Prescribed burning, they had really, pretty good details on their burns, and I thought that that was, acceptable. And then for capital and range management, I did not have anything, yeah, so they have a good policy and good examples of, their, responses to escaped cattle. And lots of equipment as well. So I didn't have any other concerns. I gave them a 9 out of 10, just because, a little bit more detail. I was looking for a little bit more detail in the invasive control.
Okay, good.
So, yeah, invasive control, there's definitely some information here. I would have liked more detail. It does say like twice annually, spring and summer, it's kind of like a regimen, but there's sometimes strategic times you need to get in on that, just having a programmed timeframe isn't always as effective as, something that's more adaptive, I guess. So they did include things like soil testing and awareness of soil parameters. And I thought that was good. Of course, feral animal control had, more than one method available. It was good, basically organized removals and trapping. So fencing certainly well adequate there. They did mention the typical issues to roads and culverts, so certainly well aware of that, sediment blockage, heavy rainfall. I did like that they had it programmed in, inspection, monthly road and culvert checks. The prescribed burning, they say that they'll use Florida Forestry Service to issue permits and facilitate the burn. I assume that means lead the burn, and then they said if they're unavailable, then they could move to a private contractor. I prefer to see, somebody again in-house capacity, but not as critical in some aspects. I do like the response plan. They did outlay some good details there. And see the pasture and drought management. I thought that was definitely sufficient, and that the equipment is sufficient as well. And I also gave a 9.
Okay, awesome.
Yep, I agree with everything said so far. I would have liked to see more on the herbicide, like Ken pointed out, it just says spring and late summer, but invasives are growing all the time, so just basing it on 2 times a year wouldn't work, especially at Lower Green Swamp. I like how they talked about dragging the pastures to reduce flies and other pests. I don't know if that's common, but I didn't see it in any other bids when we used to do this, so I think that's really cool to read. I like how they have the ability to trap swine. I don't understand the organized removals that were mentioned in there. I think that maybe that's a carryover from our previous lease that said they could organize removals with a hunt club or something like that. I don't understand why that was in there, because that would not be approved by the county. So I gave them a 9 out of 10. I think it was very well written.
Steve?
So I also noted the treating invasives twice a year, but nothing on how or what chemicals to use. I thought that them mentioning 2 traps versus all of the different leases that they have just didn't really pick up on if that's 2 traps dedicated to this lease or 2 traps in their whole operation, but just 2 traps didn't seem very like enough. For all of their leases, the use of forestry or contractors for burn, I wasn't really too clear on that one. I liked that they talked about burning, but then when it came down to how, they just said forestry, and working with forestry can be complicated sometimes. They're not always available. And then I wasn't sure what the county would think on having a leasee hire a contractor to do burning. The liability, how that would work out. So I wasn't clear on those things. The protecting of the preserve's hydrology, I thought that was interesting to discuss. Like I said, they talked about Alafire, River State Park, and their lease in Acadia to do burning with forestry. The 24-hour response time, the helicopter after the hurricane, I thought those were interesting things to add in there. So that shows real dedication to get the counts back. That's about what I had, but because of the burning and their discussion of the only 2 times a year, like previously stated, being like set on the calendar, I don't think that would really work out for what we're looking for as far as the amount of treatment. So I deducted 2 points and I scored an 8.
Okay. All right. For me, I had strengths, provided well thought out, detailed approach to feral hog removal, i.e. the 2-tiered approach. Extensive experience installing and maintaining woven barbed wire fencing, meeting NRCS standards. Demonstrates good understanding of erosion control and rate repair methods. has prescribed burn experience and plans to use rotational burning as part of the lease. Provided 2 detailed examples of timely response to escaped cattle. Provides an extensive list of company-owned equipment used to conduct range management activities. And finally, has extensive experience managing cattle leases within or adjacent to publicly owned conservation lands. As Ally and others have mentioned, one weakness that I had is that they lack specifics for initial treatment and subsequent management techniques for TSA, coven grass, and smut grass. So I docked him a point for that. So I scored 9. So on this one, we have 4 9s and an 8.
9 is good.
9's good? Okay. Consensus is 9.
I'm just grabbing some more information. And we'll get the scores out. Okay. For A1, for Audubon Ranch. Or let me read it. Okay, all the discussion and consensus scoring is completed, so I'm just gonna go back over the scores for each firm, for each criteria. Once I announce the subtotal, I just need the evaluation committee to say agree. Right, Audubon Ranch, A1 qualifications, I have a score of 19. A2 experience, I have a score of 18. A3 technical approach, I have a score of 10. Net proposal price, I have a score of 45.02. Their bid came out to 4 million. For roll hard cattle, A1 qualifications, I have a score of 17. A2 experience, I have a score of 16. A3 technical approach, I have a score of 9. Net proposal price, I have a score of 50. So the total for Audubon Ranch, I have 92.02. Is everyone in consensus with that score?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. For roll hard cattle, I have a total of 92. Is everyone in consensus with the score?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Great. Proposers, please monitor unit procurement, formerly called Bonfire, for future updates related to this solicitation. If there's nothing else, that will conclude the evaluation committee meeting for our.
I do have one question of how you can get a point of 0.02 when it comes to price.
For future updates related to this solicitation, please send a message in unit procurement. If there's nothing else, that will conclude the evaluation committee meeting for RFP 26000069 Lower Green Swamp Cattle Grazing Lease. Thank you. Have a great day.